one of the big things that you say to me is make sure you put a disclaimer out there, and I so hate it.
Well, I think from my standpoint, because I'm going to speak to sort of the legal issues and, potential ramifications and sort of the legal landscape, it's important for people to know this is just information, right? We're just sharing information, you from a regular standpoint, me from the legal landscape, but it's not legal advice. So nothing that we talk about today is meant to give anybody of the listener population specific legal advice. If they have specific issues, they should look into those with an attorney that represents them.
Okay, so I'm going to slip that into the beginning of the episode so we can make sure everybody's on board that this is just a conversation and we are just having our morning coffee or water together. And I do that now. Before I would talk to you and I wouldn't think, well, let me talk about legal stuff. As I get older, I realize how much more valuable your information is. The Love You, Miss You, Bye podcast. Let's inspire each other. Hello, and welcome to Love You, Miss You, Bye with me, Christi Chanelle, and I'm here with my best friend, Lori. Lori, thanks for joining me.
Yes, of course, Christi.
We're filming early, so it's earlier than I'm used to filming, so I may seem a little slow, but I will catch up as soon as my coffee catches up. So I'm very close. But I think it's really cool because when I was driving up here this morning, I'm thinking, I get to have a conversation with my best friend early on a Saturday, and it's a planned thing. And so I know that we're both crazy busy all the time. And to have that time frame to know that, and sorry, I have been sick, so I may have to drink a lot of water this episode. It seems like it's itching my throat for some reason. But I am more than up to have a conversation with you. It's actually less prep because you're so prepped. So I was like, yeah, this is perfect. So I've been sick, so I haven't done a lot of prep for the show. So I'm so glad that you came. But even more than that, this is Valentine's week, and I know the normal thing would be to talk about love and relationships, but we are taking a sharp left turn and talking about something that struck me so hard about a week and a half ago. I was doing my normal scroll on TikTok to see what the trending topics are and just be entertained. And a clip came up, and they're talking about Taylor Swift, who I am a confessed Swiftie. So I really, really enjoy her music and how smart she is, really. So I'm watching this, and they start talking about these pictures that are out there right now of AI. They're AI Taylor Swift, but they look exactly like her, and it's provocative pictures. And I am just literally speechless as I'm hearing this information. It terrifies me. So I send you a text and I'm like, Lori, this is something like we had a different topic scheduled in our minds that it would be our next time we sat down together to talk about things. And I was like, no. We've got to talk about AI. It's one thing for me to just state, what I see, what my opinions are. It's a whole different thing when you add the legal mind as to what could possibly potentially harm everyday people. I hear all these opinions out there, which is similar to me, but I've never really heard just a casual conversation with an attorney about AI things and what they're seeing in certain arenas. So thank you for coming on and sharing this insight. And I am just like the viewer in this conversation. I'm just going to, ping pong off of the things that you're telling me and ask questions that I think they might be asking also. So with the Taylor Swift AI stuff, it terrified me, Lori. It terrified me because this is someone, I'm sure, this is a famous person. And when you're dealing with fame and things like that, this is a typical type thing, not the AI pictures, but just people feeling like they know them, they can say whatever they want, they can do whatever they want. And now it's taking it to a whole new horrifying level. So I'd like to know what your take is on the whole AI Taylor Swift drama?
So, I haven't really looked at the specific incidents, or I've never seen the AI generated photos or anything. I think the one thing we want to do is just say, okay, well, what is AI, right? So it's artificial intelligence. For anybody that is not interested in it, that's what it is. It's not human intelligence, it's artificial intelligence. And then there's different aspects of that. But as far as the AI situation with Taylor Swift, that's generative AI, right? So it's like AI that can just take certain information and then generate new information. So somebody took information about her, photos, information, whatever they did, and they input it into whatever AI platform they're using, and they generated what they wanted, right? They created images of her that weren't even her, or that have nothing to do with anything that she was doing. So I think your point is you were horrified, right? And so that's a natural reaction, because if that could happen to her, that could happen to anybody. And then when you start to take that a step further, all you need is like a second or 2 seconds of somebody's voice. And the next thing you know it, you're generating voice clips that are supposedly you or me or Taylor Swift or anybody, right? So now
Can I
you can,
interject on that?
yeah,
I
yeah,
actually, they have this ad that plays on TikTok, and the ad is taking a song and then putting your voice into it, but it's AI generated, so it's making you sound like a singer. So that completely touches on that right there, where
mhm,
they can just take my voice and turn it into a hip hop song, and it,
yep,
you know what I mean? It's takes away the
yep.
talent behind things. I'll tell you what.
Well, that's another point, right? Is you can generate anything. So now there's AI generated books and AI generated songs, and you're taking this human component right out of it, and anybody can create anything, and they have zero talent, and they have nothing but a computer and AI capabilities. And so, we're talking about, embarrassing things and things that could be hurtful. Maybe, the Taylor issue is, could be hurtful to their image, and then it could be hurtful to her career, maybe because, people can just take her songs and make them their own, and things like that. But then, you have to think about the really scary stuff, which is, someone taking your voice or your child's voice or somebody and then posing as you and reaching out to your loved ones or whomever and saying, well, that they have you, right? They have you, they've kidnapped you. It's their voice saying, Mom, I'm in trouble. It's their voice saying, Mom, I need your help. Mom, I'm in trouble. All these different things. They're scams that people are perpetrating against regular people because they have these voice clips that sound just like their kid or just like their mom or just like their dad. And so now you're talking about not only hurting people, but using AI for evil, right? This is like pure evil, trying to shake people down, trying to get money from them, saying, if you don't give me this amount of money, then I'm going to hurt your child, and things like that. I mean, this is happening. This is really happening.
Well, I think, and just like everything, when you see, I would like to think that most people that invent things do it with good intentions. There's always going to be those people that say, well, hey, he can do that, we can do this. And it's terrifying because AI, there's so many ways that it can harm us, and there's ways that it can help us, but we don't even know all the ways that it can harm us yet. So when we go back to the Taylor Swift situation, the first thing I thought of is, I'm so lucky that I was able to be part of a time that didn't have social media. I wasn't able to put all my stuff out there as a 19 or 15-year-old girl, not quite thinking through the ramifications of what I say. So now, obviously the world has to live with that, but I'm thankful because maybe I would have been, sending a bathing suit picture to my boyfriend, you know, and I don't have that stuff out there, which actually, I'd probably look better back then, so it wouldn't have been so horrible. But my point is, I take I try to safeguard my kids from, don't put it out there, because it's there forever. And you have people that are like that, really like cover up their bodies, and they don't even want to show a shoulder. People can take those images that you've worked your whole life to have a certain image and destroy it in seconds. And that right there is just you can't take away those images that people now have in their mind. And it's not you, but it's like you. I think
Yeah.
that's where I jumped to first was.
Yeah, I think the average person, when they hear something like that, it is horrifying, right? It's like, well, what are we doing here? And I guess, maybe I want to kind of dial back a notch and say, I'm not against AI. I'm not somebody that, doesn't have innovation in mind. I think innovation is wonderful. And I think that there are areas where AI can assist, right? That's what it is. It's like assistive technology. But, there's sort of the extreme. It's like there's the extreme one way where people are worried about the world being taken over by robots, right? And then there's the extreme the other way where it's like, oh, this is just helpful and it can't hurt you. But, I think my overall position on this is, these are all emerging technologies, and the law is still trying to figure out how to keep up with it. And so, from my perspective, I've always worked with really large companies. My entire practice life, it was defending pretty large corporations. And so I've been following these AI issues for a long time because they're all very highly technological companies that see the value in things like this. What the purpose of artificial intelligence was and is, to take these huge data sets and then basically be able to learn a pattern of behaviors and learn how the user wants it to work, right? So like it knows what you're going to say. It can help you. It goes faster. You're typing and it's predicting your next sentence or comment. With the traditional AI, it doesn't create anything new. It just takes the data that it has and helps you do things faster, better. But with generative AI, you're producing new. So you're taking all the data that's in there and then you're asking it to do something new. And the information in these platforms in AI, it only goes up to a certain point, right? So if all the data is up through 21, then something that you might ask it for and ask it to produce for you now is not going to be up to date. It could be false. It could be wrong. It could be discriminatory in a way. So if in 2021, it was only men who do this or only women who do this, then if you ask it for something in 23 or 24, it may just think that, okay, well, we can't generate that for you because you're a woman and this is really for a man. Just silly sort of things like that. But it just makes things up when it doesn't know what to do. They call it like hallucinating. So if you ask it to do something and it doesn't know, it just makes it up. In the legal context, there's a notorious incident of a New York lawyer who decided when ChatGPT came out, basically, said, generate me a brief that's based on this, that, and the other thing. And it turns out ChatGPT didn't know what to do, so it made it up. And it quoted cases that don't exist and relied on law that doesn't actually exist.
Oh, no.
So when the court got a hold of this, and I suppose it was their law clerk or somebody that started trying to look for these supporting cases, and they don't exist. They were fabricated. So the lawyer got sanctioned. I wouldn't be surprised if his client sued him for malpractice because
the client could have done that on his own.
Exactly. And it was wrong, right? It was wrong. At least if it was the client representing himself, he would have tried to look for proper law and so forth. But this is how dangerous it can be, right? There's this idea that if I generate it, it's correct, and that's not true, which is scary. Right.
That's crazy though. I turned on a podcast this morning. I don't even remember the name because all I did was type in AI. When I'm listening, now I have to tell you, it takes a lot to keep my attention. My mind will kind of go off into la la land unless the person talking is able to capture it. And so words will capture it. So as I'm listening, I'm zoned out. I'm like planning this episode. I'm totally zoned out. And then all of a sudden I hear nuclear war.
Huh.
It jolts me out of my thought as I'm driving.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. So they're saying that the top 3 things to end civilization is nuclear war, COVID times 100. So what is it? Warfare, and then AI.
Warfare, right?
Yeah. And AI. Those are the 3 things that can end humanity, which is a dark turn. I know, I realize it's a dark turn, but it
Very dark.
jolted me
Very
out.
dark.
Yeah, it jolted me out because I think I get all of those on a level now. After having COVID, I understand that one very well, and how and what it can do. Nuclear war is something, because we're in war, that's always been a concern because it's a button press. The other one is AI, which we don't know all the ways that it can do it, but some of the things that I saw was that it's actually starting to create its own thought process in some things, where it's building upon and having their own opinions that differ from ours. That's where it gets scary, because if it can start to build its own thought process in mind, that's kind of terrifying, Lori. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
ah,
I still don't know enough about the technology to say like it completely can act on its own. I think at the end of the day, it's still relying on sets of data that's been fed, right? So I suppose if you fed in there lots and lots of very bad stuff, like, hey, let's go back to the Holocaust and say that the Holocaust was appropriate, or let's
oh,
say that
yeah.
this is the direction. I suppose that it could generate like-minded thinking. To your point, it's not going to just evolve completely on its own with its own. It's a machine, so it doesn't have a thought process. It needs to be fed information. And I guess, one of the contexts in which I've been dealing with it, or that comes up a lot in my world, is that hiring people is a big investment for companies. Finding top talent is a very time consuming process. And not every company has a huge talent acquisition team or recruiting team. A lot of companies use platforms, different HR platforms, where when you apply for the job, you go through their platform, you upload your resume, and there are a lot of features that have been used for years that are not scary. They're just the sort of traditional AI, where it helps go through large sets of data. And let's say you have 700 applicants, so it helps you narrow down based on the job description. Do these people even meet the job description, right? So it can help you with those kinds of things. But there are a lot of platforms out there that are starting to take the next steps, that they're going to choose the candidates, or they're going to use technology to interview these candidates. They're going to be the ones to interface. You're going to deal with a chat bot. There's all these different things, like the chat bot will pop up and be like, can I help you? Like you see on all these websites. But do you as a company really want to get so automated that it's not until the last step that you're actually interviewing the person and seeing the person live and then making the decision? And so there's a lot of talk around, and a lot of legislation around, like, if you completely take employee decision making, like if you take it out of the hands of a human being completely, when you rate people's performance, like if you decide to use a performance system that uses AI, are you making decisions about people's performance and fit for a job by listening to a computer and by listening to what AI is saying? So again, it goes back to that, like, was there a historical path where, maybe women had this job more than men? So then are all the men getting excluded? and, was a certain, when you just start thinking about the historical sense of like, you can see how discrimination can become an issue in hiring and in rating people's performance. So there's a lot of legislation pending, there's a lot of legislation out there. And all of it is sort of saying if you're using AI to make decisions like that, you could be in violation and you could be discriminating against people unknowingly.
You think if they have built this, that there's going to be some kind of filter mechanism where, or something where you could say, this will include women of all ages, men of all ages. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not yet, but because that is and could be a potential problem, I would hope that they would put in safeguards where you can say, do not exclude anyone unless they don't have a degree, that type of stuff. Just thoughts. But yeah, right now, heck yeah.
Yeah, I am pretty sure that most of these systems are kind of fail safe in that way. But there's
Mm-hmm.
still that mentality of like, but you don't know, right? You really don't know. And I think the guidance out there from a lot of the, like the American Bar Association and local bar associations, and just, there's a lot of guidance on it. And then there's legislation. There's definitely legislation in New Jersey, not New York State, but New York City. California is always out in front of this. That while we need to embrace it and understand it, we must be vigilant of the inherent risks. And that's how I'm guided, and that's how I guide my clients. That's how I've always guided my clients. And now that I sit internally in a company that, you know, uses technology and is highly technological, everything I look at when it comes to AI and machine learning and generative AI is what are the risks, what are the benefits, and how do we find a middle ground? That's sort of how I view this.
Yeah, and that's come into my mind just as a regular consumer and learning how to do editing and all these other things. At first, I was against it. I'm like, I'm all
Mm-hmm.
about the human experience. I mean, when you're storytelling and you're doing stuff like that, you want it to connect to the heart. You want it to connect
Yes.
to the brain. And the more that you put AI into that, the more you take away the heart, in my opinion. So
Yep.
I had that standpoint. I had that was my stance on it. And then I started to realize if I don't at least embrace it, like you're saying, I'm going to be left behind and I'm not going to know how to move forward in the community of editing and storytelling unless I at least learn it and get a little bit behind it. I think it's finding that happy medium, like you're saying, between the heart and the technology to
Yep.
really kind of find your way. And I think the people that can straddle that line properly are the ones that are going to succeed the most. Now, on this same note, are you worried about getting jobs eliminated with this whole thing, or do you think it's going to just spark new opportunities in the lane of AI?
Honestly, I really don't think that robots are going to take over the world. I really don't. I don't believe that. I think there's too many jobs and too many things that require that human analysis and that human check, right? So even if robots build it, there's still going to be a human that has to check it and has to make sure. And so, yeah, it might eliminate some of the jobs that are like you do a task, you do a task,
Like
you do a
what?
task.
What do you see it
Um,
eliminating?
I don't know. I mean, I really haven't thought
Proofreading?
about it. Maybe,
Mm,
maybe it'll impact the editing community. Maybe it'll impact, I do think in a manufacturing context, there's probably jobs it will eliminate.
yeah, factory.
But I still think that it's going to create new opportunities. It's going to create, it's probably going to break even. In my mind, that's what I think. It's probably going
Okay.
to break even because as everything gets more sophisticated, then you need to find people who are experts in those sophistications in those areas. And so, when you have self-driving cars, right? Which
Which I'm
we
scared
are,
of.
yeah, and I am not a fan of myself
Hmm.
personally, especially as a, products liability lawyer for most of my
Oh
life.
yeah,
It's
that's right.
I'm just,
You see the red flags, huh?
I'm just not a fan. But you know, some will say that automated autos are actually going to be safer, or actually are safer statistically, because they're more predictable than human beings. You cannot predict what the person in front of you is going to do when they all of a sudden decide to look at their phone or pick up their phone, or they get distracted by their kid or whatever.
Good
That
point.
is not predictable, right? But the technology in the self-driving car is predictable, and it knows that if there's a person, it's going to stop. It knows, so there's
Hmm.
real proponents for it.
Yeah.
But to me, I feel like it's still too new. And, anything that is just rolling off of the assembly line and just rolling out, there's always going to be glitches. There's going to be periods of time where, you got to check what's really happening. And, is the program running the way it was supposed to? And then if it isn't, then a human being is likely going to be the one to fix that. So,
Why in 2 minutes were you able to make me go from I'm never getting into a car like that to I think it's brilliant. I want to do it in 2 minutes, Lori. Because
yeah,
I never thought of the whole checking your phone, turning the radio down, talking to somebody next to you. That is that makes so much sense because you're
right,
taking out the human element of the mistakes that happen on drinking and driving. All of those things.
right,
Oh my
right.
gosh. Okay.
But then the other side of that argument is, does the technology understand enough that, let's say it's programmed so that if a person walks in front of the car, it stops, right? It's going to stop short of hitting that person. Well, what if there's one person and then another person behind that person, and they're very close in proximity? The car isn't going to know or be able to predict which person it should avoid, right? So then that's where the lack of human reaction and human processing, you have those scenarios of the car can't make the judgment in a situation like that, which it's supposed to hit. Is it supposed to hit the barrier or something else? So I think you have that's the other side of the argument, that the car doesn't know. And so the car can't make ethical judgments. The car can't make decisions about, it's like the who do you throw overboard, right? Those kinds of ethical dilemmas, the car can't do that. So it's
As
there's
long as
there's
I'm in the car,
arguments.
Lori, I think I'm safe still. And I'm not
And I
walking
don't
in front
know.
of it.
We've already become a society, I think, in my view. You're so distracted by so many things that, what do? You don't pick up the phone and call people, you just text them. And then you can't even actually text them words, you text them emojis. And, and like we're already, everybody's like doing their TikToking and all their, social media and all these things. And it's like, we're already so distracted by all of these things and bells and whistles, and
Short, short.
everything is immediate gratification. And so when you start to talk about AI and generative AI and all these tools and machine learning, like they all have a good purpose, but in their extreme, are we just contributing more and more and more to like the dumbing down of the world? Really? Like, are we just taking all of the decision making capacity out of people's hands and handing it over to a computer and saying you do it? And that's what doesn't sit super well with me. Is people are creative, right? People's brains are amazing. People think of and create the most amazing things, like whether it's actual art or a story, to your point, the storytelling, the heart of the matter. And do you really want to take that away and have AI write your book for you? Like,
No.
what, really? Do you
No.
want to create like Christie's podcast that like Auto Christie like yells at,
Imagine that.
right? I mean, like why? Why would you want like Avatar Christie to like run your podcast? Like it's those moments where I'm saying like, I'm still a person that writes letters and sends cards to
You
people
are.
and picks up the phone, but yet I've embraced technology because I have to, because I work with, or did work with Fortune 500 companies and, hugely successfully smart engineers and, and now scientists and people that are just light years, ahead of me in terms of what they know about these technologies. And so I have to embrace it. But personally, I am not going to be using Chat GPT to create like work product that I'm going to turn over to a client.
Well, I do
That's the
need to tell
thing.
you something. You just brought up like a fictitious idea of a podcast, Christie's Avatar. Well, I was listening to, I'm always trying to learn, and they're like, there is either already out there or it's coming, is if you ever get sick, you just put all of your stuff inside this AI and it will do the show for you based on whatever you want it to talk about. And it's you. That is freaking scary. Like, I was sick this week, so I could have just said, Lori, let's just do this, and then I'll just send my avatar to fill in. That's coming, Lori, and it's right here.
Yeah.
It's
But what?
crazy.
But you, because of the reason you're doing this and the platform that you're using to tell your stories and to tell other people's stories and to basically connect with other people and inspire them, and you don't want Avatar. Well, I don't think you want Avatar Christie doing that. You want Christi Chanelle doing that.
I know, but I
So
mean, it's nice to have a sick day. I'm just saying,
I
but I
guess,
wouldn't
I
do it.
guess,
I wouldn't
yeah.
do it. I can make that vow. I may just try it for an intro just to show everybody what it's about, but I
Mm-hmm.
love doing this. I don't want to send a
Yes.
robot me in there. Why just have somebody else do
No.
the podcast for me and I feed them the words? It's the same thing.
No. And
But
and I feel the same way about, when people ask like, well, wouldn't it just be so great if you could generate all these things through generative AI? And I'm like, yeah, that's great from like a time perspective, but I didn't work my ass off my entire life, go to 4 years of law school, do everything I did, practice my whole career so that I could turn around and ask a robot to like do something for my client. No, like, no, my client's expecting me. They're, well, in this case I'm now inside, but when I was external counsel, they're paying hourly fee for me to give them my thoughts and my advice and my expertise, and not something I punch into a machine and then turn around and say, oh yeah, this is what we should do. No.
you're right. But if you flip that also on the other side of this, you and I, the humans, will be competing against the AI versions out
Yes.
there. That's the
Yes.
hard part, is to know they need to put that little, which I think they're going to start doing. I think YouTube is starting this where they put an AI generated type sticker on the bottom so that
Mm-hmm.
people now know the difference between what's created by AI and what's created by a human, which I think is good because that will give people an opportunity to choose. Do
Right.
they want to watch AI or do they want to watch an actual human do it? But we're going to be
Right.
competing, Lori. It's coming.
Yeah, but you know what? I think about what I do every day now, and it's different being inside the company than outside of it. When you're inside the company, you're meeting with these stakeholders every day. They're coming over to your desk, they're calling you on Teams, and they're saying, oh my God, here's what just happened. What do I do? And what do you think? And what would you do? And they really don't want to hear like, what's the party line. They want to know like, what do I recommend in this particular scenario? And no robot is going to be able to do that. When people come to me, they know they're going to get a fair and balanced representation of not just this is what the law says, right? So a robot is going to spit out, or an automated, it's going to spit out, this is what the law says. This is the black and white. I give them the gray. That's the difference. And so I will never be replaced by a robot, in my view. You
Period.
know?
So one of the things that I see a lot on TikTok is when they talk to Siri, or what's the other one? Alexa, when they talk to
Alexa.
Alexa and they're like, Alexa, who's going to win the Super Bowl? And then Alexa will come up with something and they're like, see, it's already predetermined. It's scripted. They're making it up. They're having hallucinations. Oh my God, you've just filled in a blank space for me. No
Yeah.
pun intended.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
I
just
never
make
could
shit up.
figure that out. I was like, why does it already know this stuff? It's because
No,
it's making it up.
you make it up. They're not going to take over the world. That's really my upshot.
Well, I hope you made a lot of people feel better to know that they're not going to take over the world. I mean, if we get anything across to everybody, it's you don't have to worry about that. But we are getting closer to the Jetsons. I mean, let that be known. Um,
Definitely.
I did
Definitely.
I did want to touch on one thing that you said about how an AI can generate your voice or the voice of a family member or a child or a cheating spouse. It can do a lot of damage in that way. I would suggest that one of the things that I did with my kids when they were younger was we had a family password, a family code that we would use. And I would say, if a stranger comes to you and says, your mom told me to pick you up, make sure they know the word or run, one or the other. But
One or the other.
I'm
Yeah.
running. So I would suggest maybe doing the same thing with your family, with your husband, with your mom or your dad, just so that you have a word. And if this AI thing, this voice thing does start to catch fire and it starts to happen to more people, you say, got it. What's our word? And that way that they can't get you, because if that AI generated thing doesn't know your word, then you're good to go.
I think when you asked me if we could talk about this, one of the messages, I sort of wanted to convey to people is like, just be smart, right? Just be vigilant.
Do you know
Don't,
who you're talking to? I mean, not everybody
right.
has that.
No, I know, but it's common sense, right? Just common sense. Like, you know, we all like to put stuff on social media. We all like to share what's important to us, and that's fine. And just, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying be careful,
give
right?
us some
And
give us some tips. What
I
what
mean, I
should we do?
I think, well, I think from an AI perspective, like there's not a whole lot you can really do other than just be mindful that if you're going to use this technology, double check yourself if it's an important thing that you're using it for or whatever. I mean, just don't assume it's right, from that perspective. But also that just the way hackers and really technologically savvy people have figured out how to steal people's money and steal people's identities and all that, this is going to do that too. Like this is just emerging technology that people are going to use for bad and are going to do bad things. So be vigilant. If it doesn't sound right, don't trust it. If you get the call saying your kid is in danger, use that word, or just stop for a second and say, okay, and think it through. If somebody's demanding money from you, if the robot calls you and tries to shake you down and says like you owe back taxes, okay, like stop for a second. And there's so many things you can do, and I would just say use the same techniques you would if you were feeling like you got a fraudulent phone call or a fraudulent letter or a fraudulent email, or these things that ask you to click on everything. Like just use those same moments where you take the step back and say like, this just doesn't sound right. And if it doesn't, if it's threatening, anything that's like threatening and says this must be done now, usually that's the first indicator that something is wrong. Don't use the same password for every single thing, because if the AI or the machine or whatever can crack your passcode, then now they can get into every account you have. They can get into your bank account, your credit card accounts, whatever. It's like just use the same sort of vigilance that you would with any electronic activity. Don't put your whole life out there, because then it knows everything about you. I'm right in the middle. We got to embrace it. Can't be afraid of it, but don't be so quick to jump on the train that like this is going to change your life forever and everything should be done through AI.
Everybody has that thing that makes them special. Don't remove that by putting a robot in front of yourself and your creativity and your perfection, imperfect perfection. But that's what makes us human, and that's why it's so valuable to not let AI rule your world. So, really appreciate you being here. Was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I would just say, be vigilant, enjoy it, play around, see how it can work in your life, the whole AI sphere, and then just, stay human.
Stay human. Oh my God, that is like the best line. I'm going to use that this week in my post or next week. Stay human. And it is Valentine's Day week. So we obviously want to wish everyone much love to their families, to their friends, to their pets, and to you, Lori. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I love you being here. And I have to do one call to action at the end of the show that I hate to do. So last week I talked about supporting the show down in the show notes where it says support the show, and it'll take you to denominations of 3, 5, and 10. This week I'm going to say, if you have the time, I would love you to put a review if you're listening to it through a podcast streaming software or something on your phone. Just put a review. And if you're listening to it in YouTube, then put a comment and put a like right this second, because it helps get the show out there and you're supporting it even if you can't do it monetarily. So like and subscribe, come back and listen to me next Monday. And of course, we're going to have Lori back on the show because she has such a good insight and I love to learn from her. So again, thank you for being here. We're going to say it together. 1, 2, 3. Love you, miss you.
Love you, miss you, bye.
Love you, miss you, bye.
LUMUB podcast.
Love You, Miss You, Bye has been brought to you by Christi Chanelle, LLC. But if you're looking for more information or want to follow us on social media, go check out ChristiChanelle.com. All the podcasts are streamed there and the YouTube episodes are there. So why not? You can also listen where all podcasts are streamed. This includes Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And lastly, thank you to you, the one that's listening or watching. I appreciate you so much. Love you, miss you, bye.